Hello everyone. I'm here doing another instant reaction to two main events that just happened here halfway through our Saturday of a lot of boxing. Of course, over my shoulder here, Leigh Wood versus Anto Cacace, and then over here we've got the result of Souleymane Cissokho versus Cacace, otherwise known as Mean Machine. So without further ado, before I get into this, of course, if you like these if you like these instant reactions that I try to do after fights from here on out, it takes a good amount of time, effort, all that. So if you could, a like, share, a subscription, anything helps. If you want to see more live coverage like I did with the event over here, Souleymane Cissokho, Mean Machine, for those who weren't able to watch it because Top Rank decided to not broadcast it legally in the United States. For more live coverage like that, I'm going to try to do it when there's a fight that I think deserves coverage that it's not getting it. You can follow all of my coverage at my Twitter, at PHILLIKESFIGHTS. It's the same handle I use here on YouTube. So with that all being said, hello, welcome back. These two events obviously were not the blockbuster that Naoya Inoue, Ramon Cardenas were, but I do think that they deserve some reaction here. I think first I'm going to get to Leigh Wood versus Anto Cacace. It's a fight with a bigger spotlight, perhaps bigger ramifications, although I'm not quite certain. So let's get into it. So first, again, why did this fight happen? We had Anto Cacace, who was a world champion in the IBF at 130 pounds. His mandatory was Sugar Nunes, who Cacace opted to not fight over predominantly reasons around financials. However, I do think that it was also an assessment of risk. I think Nunes, a much smaller name than Leigh Wood. Yes, name value does correspond with financial value, but there was a high probability that Nunes was going to beat Anto Cacace. Although, with his performance tonight, I'm not even so certain that that was a inevitability. But this was a fight predominantly made due to financial reasons. Leigh Wood, much like Anto Cacace, had a legitimate world title. In Leigh Wood's case, he vacated it to not fight Atabek Kolmatov. Yeah, remember him? Who went on to fight Raymond Ford for the vacant title in the 2024 Ring Magazine Fight of the Year in Verona, New York that I was present for. But brief aside completed there. You have two men coming off of being world champions, both vacating their titles to find themselves in this position. Anto Cacace on a real good run of form, of course, before this fight, coming off of a quiet yet dominant performance over Josh Warrington. Before that, a surprising knockout upset win over Joe Cordina on a Riyadh season card. For Leigh Wood, coming into this fight, also had a win over Josh Warrington, but that was, if you remember, a 8th round comeback knockout victory where he was basically getting battered for the entirety of that fight up until finding the knockout shot. Before that fight, of course, for Leigh Wood, he had his two bouts with Mauricio Lara, in which he went 1-1, but had a dominant showing in the rematch when Lara was not able to make the weight. So, okay, that's the stage. Now let's get to the fight itself. Really good fight. Really fun fight. Through the first 3 rounds, they had set the pace at a very high level, which was a little bit shocking for me. If you tuned into my live prediction that dropped early this morning, sadly, I couldn't get it out any earlier than that, but I thought that the writing was on the wall in a sense that Cacace was going to just be able to outbox Leigh Wood. Leigh Wood had not fought someone with the dimensions of a Apache Cacace, who has a very long reach. I think you saw the ramifications of that in this fight. You saw Cacace having good success jabbing at range, ability to get his hooks in over the guard of Leigh Wood, who predominantly likes to use a high guard. You saw Leigh Wood struggle in a lot of those areas where Wood did have success landing good uppercuts of his own. Cacace tends to lean in a little bit at times, tends to, I think, abuse some of his length that he has. So Leigh Wood was in this fight. It was a high pace, high intensity bout for, I wouldn't say as long as it lasted. I think Cacace started to figure out Leigh Wood around the 7th round or so, and I think Wood was a little bit outmaneuvered in almost every category. I think Wood was outgunned clearly by getting stopped in the 9th round, which we'll get to. But not only outgunned, I think he was outpositioned. Cacace was able to, when Wood would have his moments of success, he would land combinations, yet Cacace was able to tie him up, rotate him, get Wood along the ropes, and then have the referee separate them. I thought that was a really smart veteran move where don't let this guy get any momentum, sort of stifle it, then look to get back into the fight. So there were good tactical decisions made by Anthony Cacace. I think those sort of veteran moves, although Leigh Wood, of course, is a bona fide veteran in his own right. But yeah, this was almost everything I expected and more. Cacace absolutely exceeded my expectations. I was thinking this was going to be sort of a dull performance from Leigh Wood. By getting finished, it of course is a dull performance in that sense, but Wood had a little bit more pop in his shots than I was expecting, being almost 2 years out of the ring. Again, he had not fought since October of 2023, which is completely absurd. But Cacace, I really think it was that length factor, and of course, tying that in with smart decision making. So good on Cacace. I think in the 9th round, you really just saw a basic accumulation of punishment, nothing too out of the ordinary, but it was certainly, what's the best way to describe this? Cacace was just able to total up his advantages. So I had established he had a power advantage, which I was surprised at. He had, of course, I think a speed advantage. He had a length advantage. And all of those advantages were able to accumulate and find himself in a position where he was able to maximize that into a stoppage win. Leigh Wood got dropped early in the fight. He protested that knockdown, although I don't believe that there really is much to protest there. I thought it was a clean knockdown. But moving on from that to the stoppage itself, as the picture over my shoulder here is showing you, turning his back, of course, it's a gigantic no-no in boxing, but when you're looking for any moment you can just to survive, of course, it's a last resort, hoping that the referee doesn't stop the bout. Of course, he was clearly looking for that, and the corner, that being Ben Davidson and the rest of Team Wood, decided to throw in the towel. I think very justifiably so. Cacace was starting to snowball. He was hurting Leigh Wood with really good shots to the body. It's interesting. I've not never seen, because I've seen a lot at this point, but it's very rare that you see someone get stopped to the body but remain standing. That is a very rare circumstance, because normally the body shot knockout that we've all come to love is debilitating. You get hit with the body, or get hit to the body, you're rocked, you're down, and you're out for the count if it's a true liver shot where the wind has been sucked out of you. This was the case where Leigh Wood was just getting rocked to the body over and over. Cacace wasn't able to necessarily put him down with one shot, but Leigh Wood's clearly on the retreat. He's clearly getting hurt badly by each of these successive shots right to the solar plexus. And there really was nothing else to do besides stopping that fight. So really, really good effort by Apache Cacace there. You know, he's on a Cinderella run of sorts. I heard someone else describe this as an Indian summer, which was a term I was not accustomed to, but I guess with their temperature and geological conditions, that makes sense. But, I mean, what's next for Cacace? I think he might move up to 135 pounds. I found it very interesting that they asked him about Oshaki Foster in the post-fight interview. You know, Oshaki Foster still with Top Rank. Top Rank of Queensberry has done deals before, but I don't think that that's necessarily a big fight. Of course, we're going to see in a few hours from now Emmanuel Navarrete return to action, who's another champion at 130. But I think if Apache was looking to become undisputed or unified or anything of the like, I'm not so sure he would have given up his world title. Yes, the Leigh Wood fight was financially better than the Sugar Nunes fight, but having a world title makes you worth a lot. So we're going to have to see what his next move is. He talked before about using his status as IBF champion to potentially enforce a bout with Vasily Lomachenko. Although, again, tonight's winner between Raymond Murataya and Zuar Abdullayev will probably determine a new IBF world champion. And I don't think that either man is necessarily a big fight for Anthony Cacace. So I think his next move really remains unclear. I think him giving up a world title was short-term game, long-term loss, if I'm being honest. I really only believe in giving up a world title if you have a clear next 2 or 3 fight plan. But who is the next person for Anthony Cacace? If you even think about if he's doing this for the money, right? Big domestic fights. Frank Warren made it clear in the ring that his next fight is going to be in Belfast. Well, you're going to have to sell me on an opponent that is worth a big homecoming when, again, Cacace, is he a proven seller? I know that the people over there in Belfast, they love their combat sports, both MMA and boxing, but I don't think that Cacace is any sort of bona fide draw. I don't think he's necessarily even a top 5 draw in the UK, maybe even not a top 10 draw. So that remains to be seen what he really offers to the table. But I think if he's going to be handled well, they should put him in position to win another world title. And I think a good option perhaps might be Maxie Hughes, who is very highly ranked in the WBA. Of course, being highly ranked in the WBA when that's the sanctioning body Gervonta Davis is most aligned with is always advantageous. Maxie Hughes is a Brit from the UK, makes it more interesting of a fight. And I think that if you can capitalize on that, beat a guy like Maxie Hughes, who has had a big profile against guys like George Kambosos and William Zepeda, I think that could be a really enticing next option for Anthony Cacace. As for Leigh Wood, of course, losing your big comeback fight after 2 years out of the ring, you're now 36. You've now lost 2 of your last 4, and one of those fights was a Hail Mary knockout from the gods. You're not in a good position. I mean, there's always going to be fights, but it's about what kind of stages Leigh would want to be fighting at for what kind of money. And I'm not so sure that those opportunities are really present for him. I think that this was effectively a Hail Mary push start to his career that didn't pan out for him. So if this is the end of Leigh Wood, I mean, he's brought us a lot of entertainment throughout the years. So credit to you, and I wish you nothing but the best. Also, really quick, I want to get to this undercard very briefly. So Ezra Taylor picks up a unanimous decision win over Troy Jones. I'm conflicted on this performance. The scorecards read extremely wide. Let's see if I can pull them up for everyone here. So, Mikhail Hook scored this 100-90 for Ezra Taylor. Luigi Boscarelli scored this 99-91. And John Latham, who is the most recognizable name of the 3 here, scored it a 97-94, which I think is about accurate. So John Latham, the more accomplished referee with the best scorecard to my eyes. But this was a very interesting fight. Ezra Taylor Ezra Taylor looked like he was about to lose this fight convincingly through the first 4 rounds. I was shocked. I had picked Ezra Taylor to win by stoppage. I thought that he was going to be a much, much better boxer all around than Troy Jones. On top of that, to steal a line from Gareth A. Davies, Ezra Taylor is an Adonis. But seriously, Ezra Taylor, a physical specimen, a guy that I appreciated his punch power and the like. I thought he was a true athlete. And I think the athleticism did show in this fight. You saw Ezra Taylor take over at the halfway point. Troy Jones was throwing a lot of punches. If you look at thrown punches, they're about equivalent, but Ezra Taylor was able to catch a lot of it on the gloves, a lot of it on the guard, not letting Troy Jones set himself in a rhythm. And Ezra Taylor was able to land significant offense round after round. He's being coached by Malik Scott, who was a former opponent of Deontay Wilder, who went on to become Deontay Wilder's coach, which I thought was a very fascinating link up that I was not privy to before this fight. But good performance by Ezra Taylor. You know, light heavyweight division right now in the UK is definitely one where you want to be involved, right? I mean, if we look up this terrible graphic that they showed on the screen, by the way, so they had ranked Callum Smith the #1 British light heavyweight, which is not unfair. Then they have #2, Anthony Yard. I'm not so sure. #3, Josh Boatsy. 4, Dan Aziz, which is absurd considering he just lost to Lewis Edmondson. 5, Craig Richards. 7, Willie Hutchinson, who just beat Craig Richards, by the way. I posted about this on my Twitter, but I have to vocalize it here for the pure frustration it brings me. But look, there's a lot of big names on that ledger. That's basically the point I'm bringing to the forefront here. And yeah, Ezra Taylor wants to be in that mix. There's a lot of big names. Of course, Ben Whitaker is, I would say, somewhat of a financial lottery ticket. So good on him. Really good on him. Liam Davies, also successful in his comeback against Kurt Walker. Kurt Walker, I think, had a lot of good ideas offensively. Looked to honestly just use volume as a way to keep him afloat in this fight. But Liam Davies, the better, more accurate puncher, cleaner work, and in boxing, it's about effective aggression, not just pure aggression. And I really think that's what separated him in this fight. Over 12 rounds, I think Davies won about 8 or so of the rounds, 8, maybe 9. But Kurt Walker wasn't a terrible performance, but Davies, I think, was a class above. I'd pick Davies, by the way, to win by knockout. However, I did forget that this fight was happening at featherweight, where Davies scored a lot of his knockouts at 122. So maybe the power won't translate as much, and Davies is going to have to box more here at 126. Also on this undercard, really quick, Owen Cooper defeated Chris Kongo. So again, on my breakdown, I'd pick Chris Kongo straight up. I thought Chris Kongo, yes, he had not been fighting the best competition recently, but still, coming off of a dominant win over Florian Marcoux, even in his 2 career losses, really good efforts. And I thought Owen Cooper was a bit undersized for welterweight. I thought that at just 24 years of age, perhaps he wasn't further along developed. And through the first 3 rounds, it looked like Chris Kongo was setting his rhythm, was going to control Owen Cooper from long range, from the outside. But credit to Cooper, you know, being 24, having that kind of engine, got him out of this, you know, got him into this fight and then got him to the win, because Owen Cooper was able to just wear down Chris Kongo, which I did not think I was going to come on here and say. Very impressive by Owen Cooper. You know, I'm not so sure exactly how far he'll get in the welterweight division, but I was impressed by that performance. I think Chris Kongo is a notable win on anyone's resume, so good on him. But I think enough of that. I'm going to briefly transition here now to the fight that happened over in Equatorial Guinea. Souleymane Cissokho versus Mean Machine Edgigis Cavallakis. So again, if you want to see a more in-depth breakdown, go to my Twitter at PHILLIKESFIGHTS. I scored every round individually. I covered the entire fight, but here is the essential breakdown for those who are not able to watch. Edgigis Cavallakis, through 5 rounds, looked like he was on path to accomplish my prediction of stopping Souleymane Cissokho. He had scored a massive knockdown in round 2, as well as a massive knockdown in round 5. You know, actually, in terms of live editing here, let me see, hold on. Let me see what I can do here in terms of pulling up really quick. If I enable this and I go here, okay, if this takes too long, I'm not going to continue with it. But, okay, here we go. Really quickly, let's transition to this.
Et repris le dessus. Oui, attention, il a été percuté là, Souleymane Cissokho, sur son bras arrière, crochet gauche, Cissokho qui est compté et qui va au tapis. Bon, le regard est lucide. Ah, oui. On connaissait le danger, on connaissait cette puissance de frappe. Attention, Cavallakis qui va tenter d'accélérer face à Cissokho qui tente de retrouver ses appuis, ses jambes.
Okay, I don't want to shoot too much of that at risk of copyright infringement. Hopefully that clip wasn't too long and I'm in the clear. But yeah, second round knockout was big for Mean Machine, as well as a fifth round knockdown where Souleymane Cissokho got sent through the ropes. It was looking very poor. Souleymane was not steady on his feet. Mean Machine was having a lot of success offensively, was even finding a very sneaky uppercut that I was appreciating as a relatively new wrinkle in his game, despite being 36 years of age. But again, this fight was a WBC title eliminator. I believe it was also for the silver belt or the diamond belt or the some kind of nonsense that doesn't really matter in the grand scheme of things. But Souleymane, for better or for worse, is going to be a back foot boxer. The amount of lateral movement I watched this man do throughout the course of the fight is nothing short of remarkable. I wish that there was some sort of tracker, maybe some sort of AI that could see just how many miles Souleymane Cissokho moved on the back foot, because it genuinely felt as if he was setting some kind of record, constantly back, forth, back, forth. He would get Mean Machine to back him up against the ropes. Then he would throw a jab or a jab straight, slip out, move off to the side. The problem is that eventually he would set his feet and Mean Machine would fire again, another uppercut or a hook over the guard. And although Cacace wasn't able to finish the job, someone like a Brian Norman or a Boots Ennis, I think, are absolutely going to accomplish that goal. Now, the caveat is this is a WBC title eliminator. The man who owns that title is none other than Mario Barrios, or potentially a 46-year-old Manny Pacquiao if he somehow beats Mario Barrios at this point in his, physical identity. So maybe some of those downsides, some of those defensive lapses are not going to be a problem against a Mario Barrios. But even then, for as much valid criticism as Mario Barrios deserves for some of his recent performances in title fights, he still defended the title a few times. And Souleymane Cissokho, had to have a real back and forth war. Not war, that's way overstated. A back and forth contest with Mean Machine. Look, my final scorecard, I had it 114, 112. Your official judges had this 114, 112, 115, 111, and 116, 110. I think all of those scorecards are actually perfect. I think those are the three scorecards which were in my range of acceptable results. But Souleymane Cissokho, you're gonna have to do something. You're either going to have to improve your defense or your offense, because I think another problem with his game was being so jab dependent, constantly throwing out nothing but a jab, naked jab, no feints, no jab counter, no real combination punching is going to hurt you. You need to be able to string together multiple punches in an instance and not just rely on nothing else but a jab. And there were several rounds where Mean Machine didn't have the ability to cut off the ring or stop it, but there's going to be people who are going to look at you throwing nothing but a jab and laugh and be able to swivel in, use their head, and get into the pocket and potentially knock you out. So again, good win. I thought this was going to be a battle of attrition in a sense, and I think that did play out. But yeah, Cissokho is going to need to improve a lot more than I thought he was going to need to, even though I did pick Mean Machine. But I figured if Cissokho won, I thought he would win very dominantly. I just picked Mean Machine by knockout, which, close. We'll get him next time. Also on this card, really quick before I let you go and I go to watch the rest of the boxing, which is happening today. Kevin Leigh Saggio again returned to this on this card against Khabib Ahmed. I picked him to win by second round knockout, but he let down all of us and he had to go to a third round. So big questions around Leigh Saggio's career. I don't know if he still has it anymore. Of course, that's a joke. Second round demolition, third round demolition. The fact remains the same. Khabib Ahmed had no business being in that ring with Kevin Leigh Saggio. Get this man in a real fight. Do the Christian and Billy fight. I don't care what it takes. You have two men who are of African, then French descent. It's a massive fight in France. France is a real good fight country. Like, I've seen the atmosphere they've had for big fights. You know, the Bakary Samake fight against Rourke Knapp. Yes, that was at a concert, so it's a little shaky. But still, you can get a lot of Frenchmen in an arena for a big all-French matchup. Make that fight. That's what I want to see. I don't want to see Khabib Ahmed. Sorry. And then finally, to end this video here, my complete reaction, Nico Ali Walsh. That's right. Top Rank won't let you forget that he is, in fact, the grandson of Muhammad Ali. He came back, got a nice win over Ebenezer Soa, who came into this fight 7-0-1. And Ali Walsh improves to either 12-2 or 11-2. I mean, the case remains that he's going to be a very limited middleweight who will get opportunities based on his name, Ali, and sadly, not much else. But hey, I like gimmicks, so not too bad. So those are my instant reactions to these two fights, these two cards that just happened. Looking forward to Emmanuel Navarrete taking on Charlie Suarez, as well as, oh my goodness, ProBox TV with Erickson Lubin versus Arjol Holmes Jr. later tonight. So I'll catch you then. Hopefully another instant speed reaction coming later on. So I will see you later. Bye.